The Las Vegas Raiders have officially parted ways with Tom Telesco, and today we're breaking down what this means for the team moving forward. The Raiders find themselves in an interesting situation. Just days ago, they also let go of their head coach, Antonio Pierce, a move that made perfect sense given the circumstances. But the decision to fire Telesco came as a surprise. Let's dive into why. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. Earlier today, Ian Rappaport reported, and the Raiders confirmed, that Telesco had been relieved of his duties. What's puzzling about this decision is how much Telesco contributed during his time with the team, especially considering the impressive draft class he put together. Over the past 15 years, the Raiders have struggled with consistent draft success. But Telesco delivered one of the best draft classes they've seen in a long time. Take Brock Bowers, for example. Initially, it didn't look like a good pick, but looking back, it makes perfect sense. Bowers has proven to be a rising star with incredible potential, but among all, the standout pick was Jackson Powers-Johnson. The fact that the Raiders were able to land him in the second round instead of using their 13th overall pick was a huge win in terms of value. Telesco also made smart moves in free agency. Signing Christian Wilkins turned out to be a solid decision. He had a strong season before his injury, showing his impact on the defense. What stood out even more was how Telesco managed contracts. He avoided handing out extensions too early, allowing the season to play out before making long-term financial commitments. That kind of restraint is rare and often pays off in the long run. Despite all this, the Raiders still chose to part ways with him. While it doesn't look like a good decision, there are reasons behind it that need a closer look. So, why exactly did the Raiders decide to make this move? The decision to move on from Tom Telesco seems pretty straightforward when you break it down. Yes, Telesco did a solid job with the draft, but when it comes to hiring a top-tier head coach, sometimes the general manager needs to align closely with the new coach's vision. To attract the right coaching candidate, you often have to offer them genuine input in roster decisions and the confidence of having a few years to build a winning team. And that seems to be exactly what the Raiders are trying to do here. Let's be honest. Right now, the Raiders' job isn't the most appealing out there. The offensive line is young but shaky, especially when you look at the tackle situation. Kolton Miller is talented, but his health has been a concern for the past couple of seasons. He's missed the second half of the season twice in a row, and was sidelined through training camp this year as well. When he finally returned, his performance in the first 7 weeks wasn't up to his usual standard. But the bigger issue, the Raiders don't have a clear solution at quarterback, and looking at the upcoming draft class, it doesn't seem like a sure bet either. So why would a top coaching candidate like Ben Johnson even consider this job? Probably not under normal circumstances. However, what the Raiders can offer is rare. By parting ways with Telesco, they can give Johnson the power to help shape the roster and possibly bring in someone he's comfortable working with. Maybe a familiar name from the Lions staff, like defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, or someone from their personnel department. That level of control could be a game changer. This kind of move could make the Raiders' job far more appealing. If Johnson feels like he has the freedom to make big decisions and help choose his own front office support, it suddenly becomes a much better opportunity. And that could be exactly what the Raiders are banking on. Giving Ben Johnson the ability to help choose the general manager could be a critical factor in landing him. Some head coaches want to feel confident that their voices will be heard in roster decisions and that they'll be working with people they trust. We really don't know how collaborative Tom Telesco was behind the scenes, whether he valued a coach's input or preferred to operate independently. Consider Telesco's background. After spending over a decade with the Chargers, he had established his own way of doing things. But stepping into the Raiders organization, that same approach might not have aligned with what someone like Ben Johnson valued. The team has reportedly scheduled a meeting with Johnson this Friday. While not fully confirmed, Adam Schefter did mention it after Jordan Schultz initially reported the news. Johnson is currently one of the hottest coaching candidates available, and many view him as a top-tier hire. But as promising as he seems, there's no guarantee he'll be the perfect fit either. Johnson is widely respected for his offensive mind, but coaching success isn't just about play calling. I always go back to when Dan Campbell first took over the Lions. Early on, his team was struggling. At one point, they were sitting at a miserable 111. Fans were calling for his job, but Campbell made a bold decision. He fired offensive coordinator Anthony Lynn, who wasn't getting results, and promoted a relatively unknown assistant at the time, Ben Johnson, who was the team's pass game coordinator. That move turned things around fast. Johnson took control of the offense, and the Lions went on a winning streak, closing out the season strong. They carried that momentum into the following year, with Johnson officially named the offensive coordinator. What happened next? The Lions transformed into one of the most dynamic offenses in the league. Dan Campbell's decision to promote Ben Johnson as offensive coordinator paid off almost immediately. The Lions finished the season on a strong note, going something like 3-4 or 3-5 in the final stretch, enough to give Campbell another year. From there, the story changed. Johnson's impact turned Detroit into one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL, earning him widespread praise as one of the league's best coordinators. In fact, you could argue Johnson played a huge role in saving Dan Campbell's job. Without him, the turnaround might never have happened. Now, the real test will be what happens when Johnson eventually moves on. Will the Lions continue thriving under Campbell, or will they regress? History suggests teams often take a step back after losing a key play caller, and it wouldn't be shocking if Campbell eventually became available for hire in a few years, based on that trend. But right now, the focus is on Ben Johnson, and the Raiders clearly see him as a top target. If I were Mark Davis, I'd be writing Johnson a blank check to secure him. However, Johnson isn't the only candidate on the Raiders' radar. Reports suggest they plan to meet with 3 or 4 other names, mostly offensive-minded coaches. The Ravens' offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, is reportedly in the mix, and the Chiefs' DC, Steve Spagnuolo, has also been mentioned as a possibility. The Raiders are also trying to lure Bill Belichick back from his UNC job to take the head coaching position. The key for the Raiders is to be thorough in their search. Whoever they hire needs to be able to call plays, offensively or defensively, at a truly elite level. Settling for a coach who can't deliver in that area would be a mistake. Ideally, though, someone who can command the offensive side of the ball would be preferable, and that's why Johnson stands out. That said, there's always a risk. Johnson has had the benefit of working with one of the league's best offensive lines and a loaded set of weapons in Detroit. 2 top-tier receivers, a great tight end, and a talented running back. That kind of setup makes play calling easier. The question is whether he can replicate that success elsewhere, especially with a team that doesn't have those same pieces in place. A great system can elevate a coach, but the real challenge is sustaining it in a different environment. It'll be interesting to see what the Raiders ultimately decide moving forward. Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce are both out. While the decision to fire Pierce made sense, moving on from Telesco feels harder to justify, given the success he had in the draft. But the Raiders still face a major issue. They need a quarterback. And it's not as simple as just saying, let's draft Shedeur Sanders. But people don't understand this. He is being massively overhyped. Many think he's a first-round pick, but in reality, he's closer to a third-round prospect. Many evaluators around the league share this view. We've seen this kind of overhype before. Remember Will Levis? He was talked up as a top 5 pick, but when the draft came, teams weren't nearly as high on him, and he slid. Same thing with Hendon Hooker, who the Lions grabbed in the second round, despite the initial buzz suggesting he'd go much earlier. Dwayne Haskins also faced the same scenario, once viewed as a top prospect, but ultimately fell lower than expected because teams weren't fully sold on him as a franchise quarterback. There's likely only one true first-round talent, Cam Ward, who seems headed to the Tennessee Titans. Beyond that, teams may still take chances, but it's far from certain that any of these prospects will pan out. Someone will likely take Shedeur Sanders. Someone else might gamble on Jaden Daniels, but those picks will come with a risk. Drafting a rookie quarterback is never a sure bet. Whether it's J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, or anyone else, there are no guarantees they'll develop into franchise cornerstone. However, the difference is clear on tape. These guys showed strong fundamentals in college, reading defenses, handling pressure, using good footwork, and working through their progressions. They knew how to climb the pocket, avoid sacks, and run a balanced offense. That's the kind of skill set that translates better to the next level, even if there's still uncertainty. However, I think Tom Brady could play a more significant role in shaping the Raiders' future. Honestly, I'd like to see Mark Davis hand over more of the key football decisions to Brady moving forward. His experience, leadership, and winning mentality could bring a much-needed shift in how the franchise operates. The constant turnover and questionable decisions have become frustrating, and Brady's influence could bring more stability and smart football choices. That wraps things up for now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.